That's the CREST model. Now, later on the training this evening, we will be going into more detail of finding out specifically what each one of those means to the individual. So you should be looking forward to that. But I do realise that despite the fact that's only one of the 7 steps, that's quite a lot of detail. So again, I'm going to take a short breather to answer a few questions, just to give you a moment to take a sip of water to retain some of the information. So just allow me a bit of time to go through those questions. So I've had a question here from Landa, which is relating to interest-only investments. Let me just go through that. I'm going to ask it. I might be able to answer it now, might not. Rob, first time with you tonight. I'm just reading your book, 44 Most Closely Guarded Property Secrets. Does rule on interest only for mortgages, only for investments, relate also to our personal homes? Okay, so first things first, Landa, please, I hope that I've pronounced it right, is if you email that question to me, to rob.moore@progressiveproperty.co.uk, I can give you a detailed answer to that. I'm going to give you the radio edit now, just because we're on a live training. But I did say I would answer all your questions. So what I'm going to do, and this is for all of you, is I'm going to give you my personal email address where you can ask me any question if it doesn't get answered to your satisfaction on the webinar tonight. Please don't share this, but I'm just sending it now. It's rob.moore@progressiveproperty.co.uk. I've just sent that to all of you. Okay, so just bearing in mind we're taking a quick kind of 90-second break from the Be Your Own Bank joint venture content, because you've got a lot to assimilate. So I'll answer this question now. So when you do interest-only mortgages, is it just for investments, or is it for your own home as well? Now, the quick answer is it depends on you and your relationship to risk. So the benefits of taking an interest-only mortgage even on your primary residence is that at the moment inflation is high. So if you spend money paying down debt, you are negating the benefit of inflation. Whereas if you have good debt, so more mortgages, your mortgages are going down over time because of the inflation effect. In the last 5 years, without any growth, the portfolio that Mark and I have has gone up over 20% because the mortgages that we have on our portfolio have been eroded by the cumulative effect of inflation. 4 or 5% a year rolled over, and because inflation is quite high right now, don't you? And you know that it's higher than what they're saying it is. So over time, your debt is getting eroded, which is why it's not smart to buy everything cash, because over time you don't get that benefit of inflation erosion. Now, if you pay down your primary residence, you don't get that benefit of inflation erosion, and probably over a decade or 15 years, it will probably cost you the whole value of the asset at the time to have paid it off. So that's the main benefit. And of course, interest only means, that you can have higher cash flow. It means that you've got lower mortgages because you're not paying the mortgages down, so they're a third less. But the other side to that question, which is important, is it's a bit like, having your own castle. You want to own your own castle because you want your rainy day fund. And it's better to have your rainy day fund in an asset right now than it is in cash, because by the same token, inflation is eroding cash. So there are actually positives and negatives, benefits and drawbacks to either one. And you know what? You should always have a contingency. You should always have rainy day money. And I think it's better to have a rainy day drawdown mortgage that you can access instantly to the tune of a couple of hundred or £300,000 than it is £300,000 sat in the bank because of the inflation effect as well. So there are ups and downs, positives and drawbacks, and it depends on your attitude to risk. The younger you are, I think the the longer you can have interest-only mortgages. The older you are, you have to have a contingency to pay those off. So I hope that helps with your question. Thank you for it. And if you want any more detail, or any of you do, rob.moore@progressiveproperty.co.uk, I'll answer it. Okay, good. So, time to get back onto the Progressive Property Be Your Own Bank joint venture blueprint. Right, I'm going to try and check in with Becky Cooper if I can. Now, I think there's been a few technical issues her end, but we'll give it a crack nonetheless. Right, Becky, you are unmuted. Can you hear me? Becky, can you hear me? Okay, so we can hear Becky, but unfortunately it doesn't sound like Becky can hear us. Okay, let me ask. I'm going to check in with Becky again in a few minutes. But don't worry, we have other people on the webinar. I'd like to introduce you, actually, before we move on, to Peter Ivanishevsky. Peter is the very charming, good-looking chap to the top right. Peter's a joint venture partner of mine with the joint venture program. So let's bring him in. Peter, can you hear me?
Hi Rob, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, very good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You?
Good, yeah, very good. So everyone, this is Peter. Peter, this is everyone.
Hi everyone.
So the great thing about joint ventures is there's no real limit to what you can joint venture on. So you can borrow people's money, you can joint venture on their contacts, you can joint venture on their database, you can joint venture on their skill sets, you can joint venture on their expertise, you can joint venture on their time. Okay, sorry, do excuse us if there's a bit of interference. This will happen when when you're live. Peter, you've done joint ventures yourself, obviously. Yeah. Why did you decide to do joint ventures?
I mean, the point you made earlier regarding it wasn't just financial to start with. So a lot of the joint ventures I did in the early days, some were financial, but to begin with, moving on, the joint ventures I've done were to do with skill sets, opposing skill sets, and teaming up with people that have got different ideas and got different skills to me. So it wasn't just financial.
Sure. Okay. Right. I'm going to try and get a picture up of you because I know you're on here somewhere. Oh, don't worry about it. It's all right. They can see you on the banner. Okay. So just talk us through a couple of those. Talk us through a couple of the joint ventures you've done. Have you done joint ventures where you've raised finance?
Yeah, I've done different types of joint ventures. So there's been joint ventures where I've raised finance for buy-to-let properties and buy-to-sell, right through to joint ventures even in the early days with regards to advertising for properties and teaming up with somebody that was generating leads that I could tap into their expertise in that particular field. So I've done lots of different joint ventures that have helped me out in different ways.
Mm-hmm. And have you raised them from different types of JV partners?
Yeah, I mean, I've raised joint venture finance from family and friends, also business partners, so what we call sort of sophisticated and non-sophisticated investors.
Sure. Okay, great. So, Pete, if you stay on the line, I'm going to check in with you in a moment.
Okay.
Okay, right. So, Pete, and the reason I just wanted to interject there is because Pete brought up our next section, and Pete and I are going to talk you through that. So if we've got the blueprint back on the screen here, different types of JV partner. Now, I would love to sit here and say to you, all JV partners are the same. You do the same thing for all of them. It's just easy. But the reality is, life isn't like that. Everyone's different. Everyone's a unique person. And we've learned there are 7 main types of JV partners who are going to be relevant to you in the business of raising finance for property investing or doing property-related joint ventures. Let's go through those now because it's really important to know the difference and to talk about which ones want which type of partnerships, which ones are going to be easiest for you to target straight away, and how you structure the deals on each of them. And Peter, in a moment I'm going to unmute you and bring you back in. So the first type of JV partner is the sophisticated investor. The definition of a sophisticated investor is an investor who is a professional. They do it for a living. You don't have to go and, give them our book or teach them the difference between an asset and a liability or convince them that now's a good time to invest. They've probably been making money on their money and other people's money for as long as you've been born. They're professional money makers, lending money, borrowing money, you name it. They're in the business. There are 3 levels. There's the VC, which is the multi-million, sometimes billion-pound enterprise, conglomerate, group of. And then there's the angel, who is the individual at the high level, the 200 million pound James Caan or Peter Jones. And then, or the non-celebrity versions, there are many non-celebrities, and I'll teach you exactly where to meet those at the end of the webinar. And then you have the private investors, who aren't quite as high level and in sophistication as James Caan or angels or venture capitalists. But they are your everyday run-of-the-mill people who are professionally investing their money, lending their money for greater returns. They're the 3 types of sophisticated investors. So Pete, I'm going to bring you back in. Okay, great. So, yeah, if you just explain one particular sophisticated investor deal you've done, talk about them, what they wanted, how you structured the deal, how they earned the money. Just talk through for a couple of minutes. Okay? Go.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I've done many different deals with sophisticated investors, but one particular one was on a buy-to-sell property I did. And it's important to remember that different people are obviously looking for different things, different ways for return. One particular way this actual deal worked was I raised the finance and they wanted a deal on the capital profit at the end. So I didn't pay them money monthly. They actually wanted a capital sum at the end. So we did the deal together. I raised the finance through meeting this person, and we actually bought the property to sell. So the money wasn't paid monthly on a sort of interest rate, which is one way that you can there's different ways of actually raising the money and structuring the deal. You can either lend the money on a monthly basis and pay the investor an interest, and then you would then take the full profit or whatever you decide on with that investor. Or the other way you can do it is actually raise the finance and give them a return, either in cash flow if it was a buy-to-let, or on a buy-to-sell you could give them a return at the end of the deal. So, and there's different ways. I mean, people ask, what's the right or wrong way? There isn't a right or wrong way to do this in particular. It's actually speaking to the investor what they want, actually specifically as an individual, and what they're happy with. And once you've found out what they're happy with, then you can obviously work through your plan in that way.
Pete, you still there?
Yeah, still there. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, great. Right, I'm full up with water,
Okay.
so I missed you a little bit.
Okay.
So, what would you say was the most important things for your sophisticated investor to get answered so that they'd give you the money?
Okay, I mean, again, each individual is different, but certainly this particular deal I did, they were very interested in the return, very into the figures, and so I had to go into a fair bit of detail. Like I said, with this particular deal, it wasn't paid on a monthly basis. It was paid on a return at the end of the actual deal. So they were very interested in right down to the finer detail, the timescales, when they could expect their money back, and also my exit strategy. So what they actually thought, how I was going to actually exit the deal and make the profit at the end. So they were very interested.
Okay, great. So as you can just see, I brought up the CREST model again. So return and exit. Were they as bothered about trust and security, would you say, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, that was important to them. I built a relationship with that person, so over time you can build that trust. But yeah, they're definitely interested in that as well. So, but this particular person was the trust was important, but the exit on the deal and the actual timescale when they could expect that return back, that was most important to them.
Sure. Okay. Just detail a little bit the the return that you gave them. So give us specifics on what the deal was. And Becky, if you're there and ready, I know you have to go soon. We were trying to get in touch with you. I'm going to try and bring you in a couple of minutes. Can give it one last go. I know people are excited to hear from you. Pete, carry on. So detail the deal out.
Okay. Well, the actual return, this particular deal was a cash purchase, and it was brought in. It was a straight down. It was worked out quite well, and a straight down the line 50-50 split on cash profit at the end. So this was quite a nice one like I say, it wasn't a monthly where I lent the money monthly. It was a specific 50-50 on cash profit at the end, and that was the deal that we struck.
Okay, so they put all the cash in.
Yeah.
You found the deal.
Yeah.
You turned the deal round in how long?
This particular deal was this particular deal only took about a month. So obviously the process of selling it on took longer, but the actual property was agreed and sold. I actually looked for, obviously looking for the exit while we were doing the deal. So.
Okay, and then in this particular deal, you split the profit 50-50.
Yes.
So their risk was higher, but their return was higher.
Yeah.
And they didn't want just a drip-fed amount of interest. They wanted a bigger, larger percentage of the profit.
Yeah, and that was important as well, because by offering them, one thing I found useful to do is, by offering different ways. I mean, we spoke about potentially, how lending the money monthly is what certain people do, but they weren't interested in that because they seen that there was a higher return by coming in 50-50 on the profit at the end. They didn't want to lend the money on a monthly basis.
Sure.
The other way I have done it is lending money on a monthly basis, and then that, like you say, that person.
Sorry, Pete. When you say lending, do you mean borrowing?
Borrowing.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, I've got a question here from Angie, which says, "Is it possible to have a couple of real-life JV case studies, please?" I'm guessing you asked that just before this, so hopefully, Angie, that's really answering your question. Now, the reason we haven't got all the deals up on slides going through one by one is because we didn't want to make it contrived or to make it in any way look like we kind of staged it. This is why I've got these people on to do these interviews for you. Pete, just because people are, obviously you're going to be here the whole webinar, but people might want to get in touch with you because they might have questions for you. Would it be okay if I shared your email with everyone so that they could ask you a specific question?
Yeah, that's no problem. Have you got it there, or do you want me to give it to you?
Okay, I'll write it as you say it, and I'll send it to everyone. Yep.
Okay, it's Peter.
Yeah.
My surname's IWAN.
Yeah.
IS.
Yeah.
ZEWSKI.
Yeah.
At hotmail.co.uk.
You need to have a stage name, because so it'd be a lot easier for your a lot easier for your contacts. Okay, so Peter, IWANISZEWSKI at hotmail.co.uk.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, right. So you all have that. I've sent it now. Everyone has that. Peter, I'll check in with you in a minute. Thank you very much.
No problem.